Okay, I think that's going to work for me. I'll have to push the levels and spots, but I think that's going to work. So, as I mentioned before, I really start with everything in. And as you first heard the mix, all the elements are there. I'm going to put them all back in, and we'll work on the vocal and background vocals from there. Okay, since I've powered up my drums and bass, now my vocal's a little bit lost. So the same thing is going to happen. I'm going to use the parallel to get a little bit more size to the vocal and have it command the track a bit more. For this, we'll use an 1176. There's a black 1176 F revision that's patched in right now, and I'm going to A-B it against a blue stripe to see which one gives the vocal a little bit more grit. So let me bring in the parallel. Okay, I've got something here with my parallel that if I bring the 1176 in, add a little bit of mid-range to it to help the vocal cut through the track, seems to help me a little bit. But we're also going to A-B a different 1176 to see if that helps even more. For demo purposes, I'm going to take a lot of these elements out of the mix so we can really hear the vocal. This is the black 1176. Now without it. Okay, so now we're going to patch in a blue face 1176 and see if that's even stronger.
Home is where I wanna be, but I guess I'm already there. I come home, she lifted up the wings. I guess that this must be the place.
So you can see that that's much more aggressive, much grainier, grittier, bitier for the vocal. Pretty exciting. Might be a little too gritty for me, but I like the attitude. I love the energy of it. It really puts some extra life in the vocal. So I'm going to leave that for now, but maybe we'll try one more compressor just to illustrate the difference in tone between these compressors. We have a old 176 UA tube compressor here, and we're going to try to patch that in instead of the blue face to just see what that does for our vocal. Okay, so we have our 176 compressor patched in, and in listening to it, it's really warm, it's really juicy, it's got a beautiful tone, got a lot of heart in it, but I'm not sure if it's going to help me get the vocal to cut through the track. Sometimes I might have both of these compressors in there, but for the purpose of this, we're just going to A/B the blue face again with the 176. So right now you'll hear the 176 parallel compressor. Okay, so now we're back to our Blueface 1176.
We drift in and eyes. Home is where I wanna be, but I guess I'm already there. I come home, she lifted up her wings. I guess that this must be the place. Well, I can't tell one from another. Did I find you or you find me? There was a time before we were born. If someone asked, this is where I'll be. Where we drift in and eyes.
Okay, I'm going to roll with that. I'm going to go with the Blueface 1176. It really helps the vocal cut through the track. There's some things about the 176 that I love in terms of tone, but I think I'm going to need the extra grit that Blueface compressor gives me. Okay, we have a few effects going on the vocal that are all created in Pro Tools. A couple of delays, a little bit of chorusing, a little bit of distortion to help them project through the track. So I'm going to show you those in Pro Tools right now. I have a few effects from Pro Tools on the lead vocal. I have a decapitator that's adding some distortion and grit. Not a lot, but just a little bit. I have an Echo Boy that's adding a quarter note delay and an eighth note delay. And interesting thing is I love the saturation on the Sound Toys Echo Boy. I tend to use a lot of that, and I'll go through the presets, Space Echo, Tube Tape, Cheap Tape, etc., and find one that complements the singer. I love the way the Space Echo emulation works on his voice, so that's where I'm parked at. I also wanted to get a little wider sense of the vocal. Brian's got a very strong mid-range voice, so I want to get a little bit more left to right width to it. So I've got a bit of a air chorus on it. Pretty subtle, but again, it's spreading the vocal out. So between the delays that are left and right and the chorus, I get a wider vocal picture. Okay, now that I have my mix balanced, I have all the pieces in, sort of my last stage of processing is the stereo bus chain. I like to get everything really close before I put the bus chain in. It's inserted, we're going through the electronics, but none of the processing is actually in. It's only a piece of the puzzle. It's a small percentage of the sound. I don't rely on the stereo bus chain to give me much more other than finishing touches. A little bit more excitement, a little bit more bottom, a little bit more sparkle. I don't go radical with the stereo bus chain. Stereo bus is just adding finishing touches. So my specific chain is usually an EQ before the compressor. I like it before because it toughens up the mix a little for me. And then in the last few years, I've been using the Cush Clariphonic Parallel EQ after the compressor. This is a very interesting EQ in that it blends the processing in after the signal. Just as I said, it's a parallel indeed. So I'll use that to just put a little bit of finishing touch to the overall stereo bus. My Massenburg will be there for top and bottom. That's the first in my chain. Second in my chain is the Shadow Hills compressor. Last, again, is the Clariphonics. The interesting thing about the Shadow Hills is it's two compressors in one. It's an optical compressor like an LA2A or 3A, and it's also a discrete compressor, perhaps like a SSL type compressor. Sometimes I use the optical, sometimes I don't. The optical tends to grab a lot and sometimes softens the mix. It's nice for rounding out peaky vocals in a mix, but I'll use just a taste of it. Just the needles will move the slightest bit. I'll be a little bit more aggressive with the discrete compressor. In this case, I'm only going to use a little bit of compression on the overall mix. So we'll play you the mix without the processing, then we'll put the processing in. All right, here's the mix, no processing. Now we'll put in the stereo bus chain. Massenburg stereo EQ, Shadow Hills, and the final touch, the Clariphonic. And I'll remove them one at a time. No Massenburg. You can see it's just adding a little bit of fullness on the bottom, a little air on top. Clariphonic is going to bring certain elements of the mid-range closer. So the vocals pop a little more. And then I'm adding just a little bit of air on the top. Okay, and this is with compressor in. Okay, one more listen with no processing at all. Okay, we're going to put processing back in. And I'll just show you what the optical compressor does. So for me, the optical grabs the vocal peaks a little too much and is softening the mix. So in this case, I'm not going to use it. But sometimes it comes in really handy when you want to smooth things out a bit. We're just going to use the discrete. in, out.
Singing to my mouth.
In. Often my compressor is preceded by a Chandler curve bender, which is a very aggressive EQ, and it'll sometimes drive the compressor in a very powerful way. So that's why I tend to put that first in the chain and boost a little top end, a little bottom. Sometimes on guitar heavy records, I might even boost a little bit or 2 or 3K on the Chandler. Here, since I feel like this record is very close, doesn't need too much more aggression, I'm going with something like a Massenburg, which is just basically adding hi-fi top and bottom to the mix. I'm adding a little before the compressor, and then I've found that I like the way my Clariphonic works after the compressor, because the compressor has evened out all the peaks, and I can then just take that smoother, rounder mix and bring it forward by increasing the focus and the clarity. I'm boosting a bit of mids here. I think these work in the 3K, 5K area here, and this shimmer I think works maybe in the 12K neighborhood. So it's just finishing touches basically. It's not radically changing the mix. I have my stereo bus chain in. I'm going to do a static pass, just basic levels, one rundown really quick, ride the vocal, just get a basic balance in the automation computer. All the faders are up, ready to go. We're printing our first pass in Flying Faders automation. During the course of the mix, as I keep working at it, I'll bounce back and forth between loud volumes, soft volumes, NS10s, ATCs. I'll listen in mono for a while, see if there's instruments that are conflicting with each other. So I'll go through various different monitoring environments as I'm going along with the mix. This Neve has got Flying Fader automation built into it. Flying Faders is a moving fader automation system. It's been in the console since the 90s, I think, and still works great, and it's always fun to just sit here and see a lot of faders move as opposed to a black line on a screen. Now that I've spent some time with the track, getting my basic balances, getting something that feels good, feels like the song, I'll probably spend some time taking the vocals out of the track just to hear all the instruments, see if I kind of forgot some part that was buried in the background that I can feature more. So I'll give a pass or two without any vocals and refine my track balances. Maybe push some things for excitement. Just work on the track alone for a minute. Then I'll put the vocals back.
Home is where I wanna be. Pick me up and turn me round.
Okay, I've spent some time doing a few passes. I got my transitions worked out from section to section. They're smoother. I've pushed some of the exciting bits, some of the drum fills, some of the pulse synth that needs to come up in the holes so it doesn't feel so empty. I feel like I've got the basic vibe of the song there. I think this captures really what we set out to do today. I think it's in a really, really good spot that I can play for the band. I know we'll make some editing adjustments, probably change some drum fills, fix a couple little bass licks, maybe tweak a vocal or two, but I think it's in a good place. I think I've massaged it enough that it feels all in balance. It lifts where it needs to lift dynamically, and it's a good representation of the song. I think it's in a good spot that I can play it for the band, get their take on it. We'll do our final editing. Normally, if this were a final finished mix, I would probably leave it up overnight, take it home, give it a listen, come in the morning, hear it fresh. Fresh perspective is always the best. So I'd probably listen to it, hear a few things that I missed late at night, tweak those, and then send it out to band A&R management to give a final listen to before we print the actual finished mixes. So if this were a finished mix, after I came in, made all the tweaks that I wanted to make, I would send it out to the band, A&R, one last time, get all their approvals, and if everybody signs off on it, then I'd print my final passes. I'm always doing multiple passes, vocal up, vocal down, guitars up, bass up, keys up, many options, probably 6 to 12 option mixes. Then after that, I'm going to print stems. I'm going to print drums, bass separately, guitar separately, synths separately, backgrounds, lead vocal, effects for vocals. I might break the drums down to a stem pass of just the close mics, then a second pass of just the ambient mics. So I have control over that, or maybe I can do a move later where I just push the room mics up in a spot. So I'll give myself a little bit more control over things. And the stem process could be up to 12, 15 stems, depending how extensive the mix was. Thanks everybody for watching. This was a day in the life of, a day getting a completed track out of the band. Long day, but I think we got something really good, and I know the band is going to be happy with it. Thanks again for watching.